Hey, welcome to the second edition of my podcast, Debo Onifade. Today I'll be talking further about electricity. And again, let me introduce you to my book, Liberating Nigeria, a guide to winning elections and reviving our country, with forward by Femi Falana SAN. Um, this was published 3 years ago, where I talked about politics and then talked about policies. Today, the maiden edition, I talked about fixing electricity in Nigeria and I highlighted some data. Today, I want to talk about another data that I think is helpful in this solutions conversation. I'll be talking about two countries, South Africa and Vietnam. And I'm not, I'm going to describe the solution. South Africa generates about 60,000 megawatts for 60,000 people, 60 million people. And it's 84 about 84% of South Africans have access to electricity. Vietnam generates about 40,000 megawatts of electricity, and they have about 97 million people. So let's say 100 million. So, and Vietnam has 100% access. 100% of their people have access to electricity. So 40,000 for about 100 million people, um, versus 60,000 for about 60 million people. Question: if you look at the South African numbers, does it mean Nigeria needs 200,000 megawatts of electricity for 200 million people? If you look at because if you look at Vietnam numbers, does it mean Nigeria needs 80,000 megawatts for 200 million people? The answer is I don't know, and that's what we need to talk about. The need determines is determined by um, how industrialized the country is. So when some politicians come and talk about numbers from Vietnam, Malaysia, South Africa, Egypt, um, it's important for us to compare rightly. And the first thing I think Nigerian government, organizations, and politicians need to do is to do a research, conduct a research that will determine how much power Nigeria needs. As I'm talking to you right now, I don't know, and I've talked to my friends, and I don't know anybody that knows. And that's, I think, the starting point. Do we need to get to 40,000? Last time I talked about what are we generating right now, and I was able to establish that beyond the national grid, Nigeria is probably doing about 30,000 megawatts right now. But what do we actually need? Do we need 100,000 megawatts to create sufficient power for 100, 200 million people? Do we need 60,000 megawatts? And if we need 50,000 megawatts today, how much would we need in the next 10 years? So as we are progressing towards 50,000, how much do we need in 10 years time? Numbers, statistics in Nigeria, I think that's the biggest issue we have. And we need to talk about that. And we need to create a solution. People have to invest in getting the right data. Uh, I don't like the fact that we depend on the West to give us data because most times they are wrong. Just a quick digression. I read recently a Western medium, a Western popular um, uh, um, organization said over 80, close to 90% of Nigerians shop online. That's false. That's a big lie. Wherever it is coming from, I don't want to mention their name. Big lie. But then you use those numbers to go get money from abroad, get funding. But I don't want to go into that. We need to get the numbers right. Our politicians need to talk about our need, and then what's the path. When this government was talking about Siemens recently, the Buhari government, I didn't even understand what they meant. They went to Germany, signed contracts with Siemens. Today, nothing. So before I go to the last point, before I go, I think the summary of this point is that let's stop the comparison. Let's focus on our need. If South Africa is doing 60,000 for 60 million people, and they're still at 84%. Vietnam is doing 40,000 for 100 million people, and they're at 100%. It tells you that the need power needs will vary from country to country. Nigeria needs to understand what it needs so that we can plan accordingly. Now, one last point I want to mention is coal. Why have we stopped talking about coal? America still uses coal. Europe uses coal. Vietnam, coal. Now, the West calls it clean coal. Now, I don't really care whether it's clean or dirty coal. Coal remains a good source of power that Nigeria needs to talk about. Okay, we had coal in Enugu in the past. Nigeria generated a lot from coal in the 50s. I don't know why nobody's talking about coal. I don't think it's going to take us too many years to bring about coal again, to produce coal and to use coal to generate electricity in Nigeria. So that's my food of thought today. I think we need to talk about coal. We need to ask the aspirants, what do you think about coal? How can we use coal to generate power in Nigeria? Everybody talks only about gas. Gas has its challenges. Pipeline vandalization is not going to go away anytime soon. You have improvement in the delivery of compressed natural gas (CNGs), but it's still a challenging mode of transporting power. You have a lot of issues with propane. Many gas plants require LPG. I mean, many gas plants require propane type LPGs. Nigeria does more of butane. We have challenges with supplying adequate gas all across the country. It's important for us to look outside gas. Let's stop focusing too much on gas. Let's think coal. Today I'm just talking about coal. Next episode I'll talk about other sources. But I think it's important for us to discuss coal, whether it's clean or dirty coal. Let Nigeria consider coal again. Till I come your way again, maybe later in the week or next week. If you want to learn more about my thoughts regarding politics in Nigeria, regarding policies, you can order my book, Liberating Nigeria, with forward by Femi Falana, SAN. It's on Amazon, Amazon the US, Amazon UK, Amazon Australia, Amazon everywhere. It's a Roving Heights bookstore in Lagos. It's a bookseller in Ibadan. It's also at the airport. Thank you very much. You can drop comments. You can also subscribe to the channels. I think this is being broadcasted on multiple channels. You can ask your questions. Thank you very much. Have a beautiful week. Thank you. Bye.